All right, if we did what I hope we tried to do last week, we got to maybe turn our attention from some of what we used to think, maybe what we kind of collected through our life about the life of Noah, and maybe kind of return to what Scripture actually says about the life of Noah. And I hope that it certainly does for me, but hopefully it does for a lot of us, is we think about this less about the life of Noah and more about the revelation of God through Noah. And to that end, last week we really focused on what God saw when he looked upon the earth. Cat's out of the bag. We're in Noah for 3 weeks. We're going to be staying focused on God's revelation, self-revelation through Noah for 3 weeks. This is the second of that. So last week we focused on what God saw when he looked upon the earth. This week we're going to focus on what God said in this historical account. And then next week, just so we're maybe collect our thoughts some, we're going to focus on what God did. So first, what God saw. Second, what God said. And third, what God did. That's going to be kind of the framework that we approach for 3 weeks, this life of Noah. And we're at the middle part of that right now. Part of the reason that I approach Noah right now, approach God's self-revelation through Noah right now that way, is because of that first kind of few words of chapter 8. And know that we're going to be working from kind of 6 through 8 here. Or roughly a little bit into 9 maybe. But God remembered Noah. Now that statement was made when, after the 40 days of rain had concluded and the 150 days had passed, and then verse 1, chapter 8, first couple of words, but God remembered Noah. Now it would be like really easy to, which I'm sure we're all kind of past the easy path here, really easy to say, well, did God forget Noah? And the answer to that is no. God's omniscient. He doesn't forget. And so, for me, since I do this from time to time, I went to the Hebrew, and that didn't help much. It still said, God remembered Noah, and the Hebrew word for remembered was translated remembered, and there wasn't a whole lot of kind of breadth to what remembered in Hebrew means. And so that wasn't helping me a whole lot. But in the breadth of Orthodox Christian faith defining Yahweh as omniscient, it's really hard to still say, oh, well, God forgot, and then God remembered. So for lack of a better, and you may have a better answer for this, and if you do, please offer it. For lack of a better answer to the idea of what's meant by God remembered Noah, is that God regarded or turned his full attention to Noah. And I don't even want to go so far as to say, well, God disregarded Noah for a time, or God did not have his attention on Noah. But to the best of my read of this idea that God remembered Noah was that I have turned my full attention to you, Noah, in this matter of being aboard this ark. Now, in the big picture, again, we want to kind of dispel some of the childhood memories of this piece of history. Noah wasn't on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights. That was just the duration of the rain and the duration of the time that the springs bore forth. Noah was on the ark from the day it closed, the door closed, to the day that God opened the door and said, come out, a full year. He was on the ark for an entire year. That's a long time. And so in that context, and God remembering Noah at approximately 150 days plus 40, or 190 days into this 365 nominal days, God didn't say anything to Noah. There is no recorded word of God speaking to Noah the entire time Noah was on the ark. Did you have something to offer?
Whenever you did, I read God never forgot Noah. And he provided for him the whole time he was on the ship. Where did the eggs and bacon and stuff like that come from? He fed Noah. He kept Noah alive. He kept all the animals alive. God's attention never left Noah.
I'll chew on that. That God remembered Noah. You're saying that when God remembered Noah, your translation of that is that God never forgot Noah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'll chew on that. Yeah, your thought?
It's also, the phrase that's used for remember is also an expression of concern.
Concern, okay. Okay, no, yeah, no, I appreciate this, I do. We just know that God didn't forget, but for God to in a kind of an inverted way say he never forgot, or that he had concern for, that I'm buying into it, I do. It's worth chewing on. But today we're going to turn our focus from that God had concern for, had regard for, never forgot. No, I want to return back to the idea of, well, beyond what God saw when he saw mankind, that was why he did what he did. I want to now turn our attention to what God said during this window of time. And if I've got it right, there are 7 points along this history of Noah's life where it specifically recorded what God said to Noah. And we're going to kind of look at these kind of sequentially as we go through, which means we have to go back to chapter 6 and begin there, because that's the first time in God's self-revelation of himself through Noah to you. This is the first time God made a proclamation about what's going on. So if you go back to chapter 6 with me, when men began to increase in number on the earth, and the daughters were born to them, and the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married them, any one they chose, then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. This is the first time that God said anything about this. I'll ask you, anybody got any questions about that? I got a kind of a question that's so kind of deeply buried into it that I seem kind of silly not to have thought of it before. Here's my question. Yeah? No? Here's my question. Who did he say that to? To whom did God say, my spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal, and his days will be 120 years? Well, he hadn't called forth Noah yet. I'm not sure who else is in the picture here. But there's one other event like this where God said in his heart, and we'll get to that one in a moment. But to whom was that said? And I'm going to suggest to you, for lack of a better answer, for me at least, is that that's again where I'm asking you to look here at this piece of event, not as a story about Noah or a history about Noah, but a self-revelation of God through the life of Noah. And that is God who is self-revealing what's on his mind when he says, I'll not contend with man forever. I didn't have to say it to anybody in particular. I'm saying it to you now.
He said it to me.
Yeah? That he will not contend with you forever?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what his word is. It's word to me.
No, I wouldn't question that at all. Yeah, he's not going to contend with you forever. Not going to contend with me forever either. Yeah. I had noted last week that his days will be numbered at 120 years as a limitation of life and as a possible answer for what that meant. Gail had actually given me a study note from, was it the Tony Evans Study Bible? Yeah, of course, yeah. Gail's favorite Bible is this Tony Evans Study Bible. There's a note there that said that he'll be given 20 years. And I think specifically from Tony Evans' notes, he'll be given 120 years to repent. And so from that thought, I also give the possibility that in 120 years, from my statement, I will not contend with man forever, 120 years, and then there will be a flood. So it's a kind of a hybrid of what we're thinking and what Tony Evans has offered that Gail has brought out from.
I've seen that elsewhere.
Have you seen that elsewhere before too? Yeah, and I give credibility to that. That when if I'm God and I'm revealing myself through the life of Noah and the events of my dealing with my mankind, I'm going to launch into this by saying, in 120 years, this will happen. And what's about to happen is a flood. And so if that has value to you, hold on to that for a minute as we walk through what God said in his self-revelation in Noah as a possibility or even a probability that what God is saying is, from the point that I made this decision, I said 120 years until the flood comes, the deluge comes. So that's the first thing God says as he reveals himself through the life of Noah, is that I'm not going to contend with man forever. In 120 years, the flood's going to come. We go through God's revelation of the account of how wicked man's life had come, and then the call of Noah, and that Noah was determined by God to be a righteous man amongst the people of the earth. And in the New Testament, we'll actually accentuate that a little bit by saying that Noah was considered a preacher of righteousness, one who actually professed or proclaimed or offered that righteousness to other people. And so then we get up to the second thing that God said, and that starts in chapter 6, verse 13. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to the people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make for yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make the rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. And this is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it and finish the ark to within 18 inches of the top, and put a door in the side of the ark to make lower, middle, and upper decks. And I'm going to bring floodwaters upon the earth to destroy all life under the heavens and every creature that has breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And you're going to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, and keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you and be kept alive. You're to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away for you and for them. If you're counting, this is the first time the word covenant is used. In God's self-revelation, up to this point, this is the first time the word covenant is used. Can anybody define covenant for me? Promise, agreement, contract. Other thoughts? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes. And there are 2 types of covenants. There's bilateral covenants, where you agree to do X and I agree to do X, and then by some sacred means, a tearing apart of an animal, in the case of Abraham, and the Lord passed between the torn animal, meaning that may it be done unto me this, if I violate that covenant, may it be done unto you this, torn apart, if you violate that covenant. In a lot of areas, it's a blood covenant, where you cut yourself and the person you make a covenant with cuts themselves, and that you commingle that blood. There's a lot of, so there's bilateral covenants, and then there's unilateral covenants, and that is that regardless of what happens, on the value of my integrity alone, I will do as I say. That's it. You'll be the beneficiary of it, but regardless of what happens, I will be faithful in doing what I say. And that's why we kind of push what God does to the kind of the end of this kind of 3-part look at Noah's life, or God's self-revelation through Noah, is because we'll talk about what God does at this. But all we're doing right now is just staying focused on what God said. What God says is, this will be my covenant with you. He hasn't revealed the covenant yet. He just said that I will make a covenant with you. Now, if we back up, we kind of get the framework of what that covenant is going to yield for you. Because remember, what God has done is He's made a unilateral covenant, and you're the beneficiary of the unilateral covenant. And the beneficiary, as a beneficiary, what it is you get to live. When I stepped forward into doing what I said I'm going to do, then all of the world, everything that has the breath of life in it, will die except you. And I'm going to preserve you and 2 of every type of unclean, and we'll learn later, 7 of every type of clean, that I'm going to preserve you on the ark. And so the ark becomes not Noah's ark, which is what we I hope we're working on this personally. I am. The ark does not become Noah's ark. The ark is the ark of the Lord. Just Noah built it. So when we think of the ark, we should not think of this as Noah's ark, as we tell the story, as we've done for a long time. We should think of this as the ark of the Lord, because as a part of God's covenant, unilateral covenant with Noah and his family is that I told you that I will save you. This is just the means by which I save you. This is my ark. This is not your ark. This would be akin to saying that it's Mary's Messiah. No, Mary was a vehicle through whom which the Messiah came. This is the Messiah of God. This is the ark of God. Noah is just he's just a tool through whom which God used to save his creation made in his likeness and image, which is going to be one of the things that God says that we're going to look at here in a little bit. So when we look at this, I want you to build an ark. It's going to be, I didn't, if you asked me what an ark was, it was a portion of a radius line for enough time. I have to have the biblical definition of an ark to know what God means when he says ark. I don't know if Noah knows what God means when he says ark. Today we use the word ark to think of a large floating vessel. We almost instinctively tie that idea of a large floating vessel to the ark that God provided Noah to save Noah. But does Noah know what an ark is? And I don't necessarily think so. I think there's more conversation that is not recorded here, and I'm not going to speculate into that, although I think it's kind of fun. I'm not going to speculate in that, but I would say that your salvation is not something that you know. It's not something that you could have put together. It's not something that you define. It's something that I provide. Because remember, this is a unilateral covenant. I'm going to tell you what an ark is. And this is how you're going to make it. I'm going to suggest to you that the idea of an ark to Noah was a completely foreign concept. And I think I'm on good ground to say that. But I don't think that God is going to tell Noah, well, if you just did what was already on your heart, you'll be saved. I think he had to tell him what this thing is. And this is how you build it. So high, and so long, and so high. And it's going to have 3 decks in it. And this is how you're going to load it, both with the livestock and for the things that will keep the food that will keep the livestock alive. You need to know all of it. This is not at all unlike the tabernacle of God. When God told Moses, I have to be careful to keep these separate. Moses, that I want you to build a tabernacle, and this is how you're going to do it. Do you even know what that is? No. But I'm going to tell you what it is. It's going to be so long and so wide. It's going to be made of this kind of metal and this kind of wood and these kinds of hides dyed this color. And it's going to be arranged in this way. And in the center of it, it's going to be constructed this way. And do this exactly the way I tell you, because when you do, there with you, I will dwell. And that's the very first part of, I think, Exodus 25. I think it's Exodus 25. It's the very first part that he tells you up front that do what I tell you, and I haven't even told you what it's going to be yet, but do what I tell you, exactly as I tell you, because there with you I will dwell. That it's not what I'm doing, and when there's going to be a place of dwelling, a place of communion between you and I, it's not your design. It's not your idea. It's not your definition. This is me telling you that I will dwell with you if you will come to me the way I tell you. This is good, because I can tell you there's just 1,000 ways I could get it wrong personally.
You're saying that God doesn't leave us high and dry. He'll not ask you to do something without telling you how to do it.
Without telling you how to do it. And for some, the rebellious man, the heart of the rebellious man, I don't need anybody telling me what to do. But to your point, I take a great comfort in knowing that if there is a God, he lets me know who he is, and he lets me know how we can be together. Because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to build an ark. I don't know how to build a tabernacle. I don't know how to approach a God. And when I try to do it myself, I ended up building this stupid tower thinking that I'm going to build a tower up into heaven. That's man's idea. Oh yeah, I got a handle on this communion with God thing. I just build myself a tower. It gets me up into heaven. Yeah, give it your best shot there, buddy. Let me know how that works out for you. No, when God when God offers this unilateral covenant, he does it in a way that completely excludes our contribution to it, but completely informs us how to do it in order to be with him again. So in the second thing that God says when he says this, that's what he's offering to us. Salvation, your salvation, and this is how it's accomplished. Then we get to that third time that God speaks. And chapter 7, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. I'll stop there for a second. There's a reason why you and not they are going in the ark. It's because I have found you, as I said when I first defined you in verse, I should just keep these on. Verse 9 of chapter 6, Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his people of his time, and he walked with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. There's a reason why you and not another. It's because what I'm about to do is destroy everything on the earth that has life's breath in it. And I'm going to begin again through you. And I'm beginning again through you because I have determined that you walk with me. And when I begin the world again, purging unrighteousness, evil from the earth, I want to begin again with someone who walks with me, who listens to me, who honors me. If we can just kind of borrow just a moment from Daniel's sermon this morning, someone who was willing to greet me as I greet you.
One thing that
Yes, sir.
he said Noah was righteous, but he didn't say about his sons and his daughter-in-law and his wife. So it's good to know Noah.
It's good to know Noah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a fair observation. The Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, comma, you, there's no punctuation in Scripture, but you and your household, because I have found you righteous in this generation. It could be you and your household. It could be just Noah. I lean a little more towards your household, even though we're going to have issues here before long with the household.
You will either be singular or plural.
Or plural, yeah. But here's, even if we take Ben's suggestion here, that you, isn't that the command to the father of a family? Is that, how could I ever expect your children to follow me if you, the one that I placed as shepherd over the children that I gave you, if you won't follow me? The command is always for the father to follow the Lord and lead the children in the way they should go. And in the end, they'll not return. They'll not turn from it. The command is that not in, because we talked about this in the first part of Genesis, it's not a value statement, it's a statement of order. The order that I put into place is that you're responsible for leading your family in righteousness. So even if we take just Ben's isolated condition here, that I found you righteous, it is your responsibility, the burden I place upon your shoulders, the call I place upon your life to lead your family in righteousness. So take them with you on the ark.
That's well.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that.
And we don't ever see that the sons and all said, what, right, no, what are you doing, where are we going?
Yeah,
Yeah. Dad spoke.
yeah.
Mine says for you alone.
You alone. What translation are you reading?
It's the standard, New American Standard.
New American Standard. And it says, for you alone I have found righteous?
I have I've seen, for you alone, I have seen to be righteous before me in this generation.
And is that in verse 7 or back in 6:17? 7:1? Okay, 7:1. So, I mean, that translation begins to lend itself a little closer to what Ben was offering in his thought here. I've not dug into that. I think I'll have to go dig into that. Chew on that, yeah. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, male and female, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal. I remember I was like in my 30s before I realized it just wasn't 2. I'd been told 2 all my life, and then I actually started reading Scripture for what Scripture actually has to say rather than what somebody else told me about Scripture. And 7, there's 2 of some type and 7 another. And honestly, if you read on down, let's just go ahead and finish it. Take 7 of every kind of clean animal, male and its mate, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal, male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. So it was 7 clean, 2 of the unclean, but of all the birds, I need 7 of each of all the birds. That's a little more complex than just 2 by 2. We jump on the ark with our smiling little giraffe faces. Yeah, that what God was preserving was a little more complex than just 2 by 2. And then so I think it's clear to all of us that the 2 of the unclean and the 7 of the clean is that the clean are such that there are species to propagate, but there's also species to offer. Which is what's going to happen once they hit dry ground again. With only the species that were on board the ark, is then Noah. I got to make sure I keep saying Noah because I still got Moses on my head from the sermon. Noah will then build an altar and make a sacrifice unto the Lord, which means he's sacrificing up from the clean animals. This, I don't think, I know that God said take food enough for you and for the animals to keep them alive, but I didn't think about maybe that's your meat source, yeah.
It's predominantly grain and fruit.
That, I mean, but what Brad is offering here, parallel to what you're saying, Ms. Workman, is that after the God's call to Noah and his family to replenish the earth, to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, he then says, I now will place, and I'm jumping ahead into one of the things that God said, he says, I'll now place the dread of mankind in the hearts of all the animals, and you will have them as food. The suggestion is that up to that point, man was only a vegetarian. Mankind were vegetarian. And now meat is introduced. The meat of an animal is introduced into the diet of man. Is that kind of part of what you're saying here?
Predominantly for Noah and his family.
Okay.
I don't know that up to that point, if you're killing animals for skin and clothing,
That you're
not
squandering the
also
meat.
partaking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No.
But to store food on the ark
Yeah.
for that period of time and the reproductive rate of the clean animals, you're not going to be eating much meat.
No, I think it'd be rationing. I'm sorry.
Eggs.
A lot of eggs.
Eggs and milk.
Yeah. I will think more about. I'm not sure. I thought about the 7 of the clean being a part of the food source for Noah and his family, but I'll have to keep that in mind. I have to think about that some. I appreciate you saying that. So if we put all that back together, it's verses 1 through 4. God said to Noah, "You're going to go on the ark with your family." Again, because I have chosen you, I've found you righteous in this generation, whether it be you or you and your family. You're to take these critters on board the ark, and this is the time that God says, in 7 days from now, I'll send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature that I have made. And that was the end of what God said at that time. So the piece that God adds here, in addition to the the information about the number of animals, which we've heard once already, is that the duration. Now, from Noah's perspective, the only thing I know about the flood is that, one, it's going to happen because God said it's going to happen, and two, 7 days before it happens, he's going to tell me to go ahead and get on board, because 7 days after he tells me to get on board, it's going to come, and that it's going to come and it's going to last 40 days. So if I'm Noah, when I get on that board, that ark, I'm saying we got 40 days of this. But that's not really what happens. God didn't say that. He just said it was going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, who in their children's Sunday school class learned that Noah was on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights? I was. Yeah, that's the way it was taught to me. Noah's on the ark for a year. It just rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That's when the rain stopped. But then there was 150 more days before the water started to recede. And then there was quite a period of time before the ark came to rest on Ararat. But that's still not the end of it. We're still sending out birds. And it was after the ark came to rest on Ararat that then the mountaintops started to be visible. And we get all the way down to 150 days before that ark door opens back up. But let's not jump there for too quick. So from what God is revealing, what God says, at this point, Noah, get on board the ark, you and your family. 7 days the rain will come. It's going to rain for 40 days. The fourth time that God speaks is in chapter 8. This is after, but God remembered Noah. Is chapter 8 beginning at verse 15. And then God said to Noah, come out of the ark. Now what we should know is that by the time we get to 8:13, by the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Noah had been at sea for a year.
Almost 13 months.
Is it? Well,
He goes into the ark the first month, and doesn't come out of the ark until the second month of the following year.
okay, yeah,
Almost 13 months.
Every year in Kingdom.
you're, yeah. As much as I like to run the numbers, do the math, I didn't on this one. I have a couple of resources I looked up that a couple of them said if you calculate it for lunar or solar days, you get exactly 365 days. There are others that say it was a little bit longer than that. I don't know if it actually said a year and 10 days. I don't disagree with Brad that it could potentially be as much as 13 months. For me, the big picture was it wasn't 40 days. It was a long time. Now, the only reason that that's really important to me is, and if I'll offer it to you, maybe it's not important to you, is that I went on board that ark thinking 40 days. What happened in Noah's life and in Noah's mind, I've not heard a word from God from the time 7 days before I got on that ark. He said, get on board the ark until I get off of the ark, which I don't know, I assumed was going to be 40 days. But after that 40-day mark, I'm beginning to wonder. God's not talking to me. 40 days is gone. Rain stopped. Why are we still hanging out here?
What are you going to do? The boat floating.
Yeah. Is this what it means for mankind to be saved? Is that we live upon this ark? I will absolutely not recommend this. But in 2014, the director Ridley Scott put his hand to the, quote, epic of Noah and created a film called Noah. I had not seen that film. I intentionally didn't see that film. I saw the trailer for it and saw all kinds of crazy juju in it and said, this is not the historical account of Noah. This is Hollywood gone more than amok in this. And so I intentionally did not. But last Sunday after we completed in here, I went home and I brought that film up and I watched that film. and to see exactly how far awry. And I like Ridley Scott, but this was not. And what I found out is that it was an amalgam. It was an amalgam of principally the narrative of the film was derived from the historical account derived from Genesis, but then it included, and I pulled out the Quran to verify this, it included some of the Quranic contribution to the account of the flood, because the Quran also accounts for Noah and for this deluge. And then it also included some of the ancient myth that I looked at really quick to see where does this idea come from, and found no, this was myth from other cultures about a flood, and all of that was amalgamized into this quote epic tale of Noah, and it was a train wreck. It was a complete train wreck. But what it did do in a couple of ways that I found valuable is that Ridley Scott did a really good job of taking you into how dark the hearts of men become and what the world may have looked like. And it was a pretty dark depiction of what man's evil can unrestrained dive to. And then he also took into account the consideration of this window of time between the 40 days and the 12 to 13 months before they get off of the ark, Noah asking questions. Why are we here? What are we doing? Is this the end? Is this what God's salvation was supposed to look like? Is that we live the rest of existence on this ark? I mean, there was a lot of questions that the filmmaker posed that I think were not unreasonable questions to be asking. Now you have to be careful because Scripture doesn't speak to it. So to start to camp some of those thoughts into orthodoxy is misplaced. So we don't want to camp those things, those thoughts into orthodoxy. But it's worth asking, was Noah concerned? We know at this point that there was a time when man began to call on the name of the Lord. I'm going to suggest to you that Noah was in prayer some of that time. Likely. Noah was probably asking some of those questions. Likely. Do we land? If we do, what's it like? It's been 40 days. How much longer? I mean, we've all been on trips with our parents when we were kids, and we say, are we there yet? Is it dry yet? I'm not trying to shape orthodoxy. I'm just asking some of the questions that I think is plausible that might have been on Noah's mind in a window of time where God was silent, after God has been speaking. And that's my intent this morning, is to focus on what God said. Not yet what God did, but what God said. So then we get to chapter 8, verse 15. We're coming out of the ark at this point. And God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives, and bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply upon the earth and be fruitful upon it. This didn't occur to me all week long until the end of the week. I just had this kind of flash in my head, I don't know, sometime late yesterday, of Jesus standing before the tomb of Lazarus and saying, Lazarus, come forth. And calling Lazarus back into life, into life after death. Now, I'm not trying to make anything more than a poetic association between that and this. That after everything that has life and of breath in it has been destroyed on the earth, God tells Noah, come out of the ark. Come out of that place that I have, that by which I have saved you. I want you to come out on this side of life, this side of your salvation. And I want you to be fruitful. And so in my mind, when I put those two ideas together, I see this amazing mercy and grace and glory of God that says, not only have I saved you, but unlike maybe what was on your mind while you were on board the ark, is this it? Is this what salvation looks like? No! Salvation is not a captivity. Salvation is a liberty. Come out, be fruitful, multiply, grow, live. For I've provided for you life. And if I can just kind of borrow from the New Testament for a minute, life, an abundant life. to live. Now, for me, I mean, when I think about what that must look like for Noah, there has to be a huge, not only relief, but joy that I'm not going to sit on this ark forever. This is not the end. This is not the new nature of mankind, to be bound upon this vessel for the rest of his life. That there is a life after death. That there is a truth to the salvation of God in those whom he created in his likeness and image. And so Noah's response is, and I'm just going to bridge out of what God said for a minute to go to Noah's response. Noah's response is that starting at verse 20, Noah built an altar to the Lord. And taking some of all the clean animals and the clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. And that's kind of just a prelude to get to, and he said. But this is that second one. When we looked at the very first thing God said, to me, I'm asking, to whom did God say that? Because it's not designated, and it's not spoken of contextually as though it were in an environment that there were hearers, other than it was recorded for me. But now we hear, and God said in his heart. Now this is a big one for me, like that first one, is that, again, nobody heard this. God said in his heart. We are given by divine revelation. This is part of the reason why it's important to me to focus on what God said, is that we're given by divine revelation something that God said. He didn't say this to Noah. He didn't say it to Noah's family. He didn't even say it to the critters that are coming out. He didn't say it. He said it in his heart. This was what's on God's mind. This is what's on God's heart. This is maybe an easy way to say it, that this is a revelation of the passion of God's heart. Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. And then in verse, and this is a Bible study tool for me. When I see language given to me in verse, there's an inflection point that I should probably pay specific attention to, something significant about it, other than just the narrative dispensation of information, that there's something I should focus on here. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. That not only will I never again destroy all living creatures on the earth by way of flood, that the order that I have created will endure as long as the earth endures. Now, they don't know this then. Nobody knows this all the way up until John reveals it in Revelation, but there is a time when the earth and all that is within it goes away, and a new heaven and a new earth is created. That, I think at that time we'd be begging for a flood. But there is a new earth to be created. But for the dispensation that I'm giving you now, as long as the earth endures, the order that I have placed in place will endure, that you can count on this. Now, from Noah's perspective, again, this is what God said in his heart, not to Noah. Moses is the one who actually received this from the Lord, wrote it down, and placed it here in the in the ordered book of Genesis, or the book of origin. So we know this. We know this is when God started again, he not only started life again, but he reset the order of life. That the life you get to live in, the order of life, I established, and it's not going to change. There will be seed time. There will be harvest. There will be winter and summer and spring and fall. There will be daylight and night. Those cycles you can count on. They're all a part of, I'm going to kind of camp this into a piece of the revelation of the covenant, that you can count on me to provide for you as we begin again, as you begin again. We get to chapter 9. This is the sixth time God spoke. It said, God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. I think most translations will say replenish. I think King James says replenish the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall upon the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and upon every creature that moves along the ground and upon the fish of the sea, and they are given unto your hands, for everything that lives and moves will be food for you, just as I give you green plants, now I give you everything. I think this is where the proposal comes from, that up until this point, man was a vegetarian. After this point, man became an omnivore. But you must not eat meat that has life's blood in it, still in it. For your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal and from each man too, and I will demand an accounting for the life of his fellow man. Whoever sheds the blood, in verse now, whoever sheds the blood of a man, by man his blood will be shed. For in the image of God, God has made man. Now, if you're ever in a discussion about the essential value of human life, which comes up when we get into those nasty arguments and those just browbeating venues of abortion, this is the anchor that God says life has an essential value. And the essential value of life is not based upon you, it's based upon me. For it is in my image that I made you. It is my life that I breathed into you. And by that alone, your life has essential value. So when we know the words antediluvian and postdiluvian, antediluvian before the flood, postdiluvian after the flood. In the antediluvian existence of man, you did not care about a lot of things. But what really chaps my hide is you didn't care. You were willing to take advantage of anybody. The core of your evil was you did not care about each other. This is the way of Cain. This goes all the way back to Cain when Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? That's the origin of, left to your own devices, you don't care about anybody but yourself. And now God says, in this new beginning, I start again. And I'll let you know ahead of time. By your own blood, I will hold you accountable for the blood of your brother. It is an origin statement. Gail's waving her phone at me, so I'm going to wrap. I'll touch on the seventh time God speaks next week because I just want to include this last thing. This is planted by God in the life of Noah and his family as they begin again. I'm going to suggest to you that this is planted by God in the hearts of all men. If we get all the way up to Solomon, we'll hear that God placed eternity in the heart. Eternity meaning that there is something more to you in this life. There is something existential, teleological, something beyond you that exists and that matters and that you're accountable to. Because when we get all the way up to the city of Babel, we get to the Hammurabi. And Hammurabi's code, which we've spoken of before in here, is 228 laws that Hammurabi established. But at the very beginning of Hammurabi's code, on that stele, that large stone that has all this recorded on it, the very beginning at the very end, Hammurabi says, this is why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because apart from this order of life that I'm establishing, these laws of life that I'm establishing, if we don't have this, the problem is that the stronger take advantage of the weaker. That those who are powerful will increase their power at the expense of those who are weaker. And then Hammurabi establishes this entire code on the foundation that this is a tempering of what you will do apart from some law outside of you. And that I look at civil order being first established at how you treat each other. And since you won't do it on your own, as your king, I'm going to establish this as a law that you must live by. And if you do not live by this law, you will be held accountable to this law. Well, thanks for getting on board, Hammurabi. Because that's what God is saying right here, right now. Is this that if you don't care about each other, I'll hold you accountable for that. That as we begin again and create again life, and if life is fruitful and multiplies, never forget that, yeah, you are your brother's keeper. So we have to wrap. I'm going to touch on 7 as we step into next week. Next week, what we're going to focus on is what God did. What God saw when he looked upon mankind, what God said, which is what we focus on today. Next week, I want to focus on what God did. So I'll touch on the 7th thing that God said, the last thing that God said in this historical account as we kind of walk into what God did. Thoughts before we close this morning?
I misspoke on that timeline. It is a year and 10 days.
A year and 10 days?
Second month.
Look at Brad's doing his math here. All in.
17th day.
Yeah.
And then the second month, the 27th day.
We need a good engineer around to do math. We're saying. So it is a year and 10 days. Is that right? So 375 solar days. That's good. Any other thoughts? Thank you. Any other thoughts before we close? Mr. Workman, could you close us in prayer this morning? It was all sealed up.